We're both natives of Brooklyn. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in I was born in Sheepshead Bay.
Were there many African Americans in that area?
It was a little hodgepodge of everybody.
And what did your parents do?
My mother was a domestic and my father was a chauffeur.
Uh-huh.
And then they grew up to be responsible for the billing department of the Brooklyn Borough Gas Company. My mother was she ran a place for children in Coney Island. I grew up in Coney Island.
You lived in an area that people visit during the summer.
Yeah.
Did you stay around?
Yeah, well, I worked at Howard Johnson's and Nathan's and all those places. I had a little piece of change in the pocket. But we all kind of hung out together.
Now, your family worked really hard to protect you from the street, but they let your cousins run wild. Why do you think?
Well, my cousins were a little wilder, but they knew about the streets more than I did, and for some strange reason, they protected me. I was with them last night, by the way.
So they're still with us?
Yeah, well, most of them are. A lot of them are.
You had a near-death encounter with one of the Pattersons. Do you know whether it was Floyd or his brother?
I had a chance to talk to Floyd, and one of my cousins. I can't remember which was the name of the groups. One was the El Quintos, and the other was the El Pasos, and they were in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section, and they had this distinctive hats and jackets, satin jackets, and my cousin forgot his jacket and his hat in Coney Island, and I was told to return it to him, and I did it with pride. Mm-hmm. I put the jacket on and the hat. And you take the BMT from Coney Island to Prospect Avenue, and you take the shuttle from Prospect Avenue to Fulton Street. And I go downstairs, and I'm surrounded by people with different hats and jackets than mine. And somebody says, "Get out of the way." And, you know, if you see somebody and you look at somebody's eyes who's about to kill you, you remember them for the rest of your life. And it was a zip gun with a rubber band, and the rubber band broke. So
and that's what saved your life?
That's what saved my life. And I broke through, and I went at 4 blocks. It should be on the world record because I broke everybody's record. And all of a sudden, I run across the street to Nostrand Avenue, and they stopped. I must have been in the other gang's territory. So I looked, and I said, it's either Floyd Patterson or his brother. His brother was really the bad guy. But so was Floyd. So I told Floyd one day, and he went into tears. He says, "My God, we could have ruined 2 good careers, huh?"
Well, the gangs I remember, because I grew up in Bed-Stuy, were the Bishops and the Chaplains.
Yeah, I remember them very much so, the Bishops and the Chaplains.
Your family clearly expected you to do big things. Did they do things to prepare you for that?
Well, yeah, they tried to put me on the edge of the middle class neighborhood where my mom worked. And they all loved my mom, and my mom was not just a maid, but she was a friend. And we lived amongst everyone, amongst the teachers. We were all kind of a hodgepodge in Coney Island. It was like a molten milk place.
But they couldn't have anticipated a career in acting because you got into that
by accident,
as a fluke, right?
Well, you know the history. It happened all through Brooklyn and the Bronx. There was a blacklist, and a blacklist by the potential man was Esther Schiffhofer before McCarthy. They started in the universities and all of the places where we had self-defense. So everybody, the intellectual cream of the crop of America, the literati, had to change their names and run. Most of them came to New York, and they were accepted by the Board of Education and taken to Brooklyn and the Bronx. And they were my teachers, and they were very advanced thinkers, and I grew up with their children. And then the neighborhoods reflected that.
But if you hadn't had a minor athletic injury, would you have ever appeared on the stage? I
don't think so, because I wanted to be a doctor and a professional athlete, and my marks began to drop. And one of those teachers, Gustav Bloomberg was his name, former Broadway producer, director, said, "I'm looking at the trades here. I know you never saw a play. They're looking for a young boy to play the lead in this Broadway show called Take a Giant Step. Tell your mother to take you down there on Sunday. What can you lose?"
So you were still in high school, and you wound up in Take a Giant Step, which later was revived on Broadway then became a movie.
Yep.
What part did you play?
I'm not in the movie. I was too old for the movie. But I did the revival. It was done on Broadway. It was off Broadway. Uh-huh. But the movie was done by Johnny Nash.
And this was one of the first plays that dealt with the black experience?
Well, in a way, it was it dealt with a young African-American. Although I didn't have this experience, he was the most popular kid on the block with an interracial bunch of people. But when it came to date, there were no black girls to date. And it worked on his personality. He had to go to the black section of town to get a date. And it was about the transition from childhood to adolescence to manhood.
You say you thought of your career as a Cinderella story in reverse.
In backwards in kind of sense.
What do you mean by that?
Involuntary Cinderella. I had never seen a play.
And you didn't, and you weren't enjoying what you were doing. That must have been thrilling.
It's kind of thrilling in hindsight, in retrospect. I would prefer to have been on the basketball court.
Yeah, but what they both have in common is that you perform before a crowd,
That's true.
People really appreciate.
Yeah,
you
so
do
that
a
part was
good job.
nice. That part was nice. Yeah.
So you were playing basketball. How seriously were you?
Well, I was quite serious to play basketball, but I was injured out for the senior season where you get your scholarships. And so I had to work at Howard Johnson's, of all places. I had to gain weight. That was the orders of the doctors and the coach. And I picked up something wrong and got a hernia. So I was out for the season.
And another fortuitous accident.
I guess so, yeah.
But there were bad things. Your father had some problems with alcohol, withdrew from
Well,
your
most
life.
of those men of that generation and the men before that had their frustrations. It started from Reconstruction, I would say, where the women in the family, they were maids and they were able to make the money, and the fathers were kind of emasculated, the men. And sometimes that's true today. I think only partially so, because it's a pass me down from one generation to another, which half of it is not true anymore, but they still behave that way. When a minority gets a frustration not getting the proper job or proper treatment, they can revert to self-destructive things.